Welcome to the Selling in the Motor Trade podcast, in association with Simco Training. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett. Now, some of you probably already know me as Skippy. I will start by saying thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. At this stage, I want to get into the A word, agency. And the reason why I say that on this podcast, there hasn't been many investors in the last 12 months, 18 months, haven't asked me, what's your view on agency? What's happening? It's happening or not. I know you've publicly said that agency models, not for you. I just want to get your views on the advantages and the disadvantages of the sales agency model. I don't know if I could say this from Suzuki's point of view or Dale's point of view. It must be from your point of view to start with.
Yeah, it is. I mean, from my point of view, I'm not a fan, as you know. I think the dealer is the physical embodiment of the brand. And I think that whatever promise we make in the Ivory Bungalow in Milton Keynes is either built on or undermined depending on the first interaction between salesman and customer, or service advisor and customer. So I think the dealer is where the value is. So I value dealers, and I want our dealers to be motivated, enthusiastic about the future. And I think the average dealer is curious about agency, and I don't want a dealer that's curious. I want a dealer that's all in, committed, enthusiastic. So I'm for.
Well, I'm cutting off there. Deloitte wrote a report saying that the average retailer will reduce their profits by 50%. I don't know what market that is. Agencies already been rolled out, I believe, in Sweden and South Africa, and the Australian market. We know Honda and Mercedes have definitely gone that way. Could you go through from an OEM's perspective the strengths and weaknesses of it, or advantages and disadvantages?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I see it is that the upsides for a manufacturer are there should be a gross margin improvement.
Gross margin for the retailer. Yeah.
The manufacturer. So it's a margin grab. The manufacturer can save some margin in the margin chain by adopting agency. That's the belief. One of the ways they can deliver that is through transparent dynamic pricing. So the online price is the price the customer pays. You can deliver a consistent customer journey. You get much more insight into customer behavior. You get through the line marketing. You should get better stock utilization. You should get better data capture. And you should get a 360-degree view of the customer. You should, or if you want to, get an opportunity to access used car revenue, F&I revenue, connected car subscription revenue. If you want to, you could do dealer-free e-commerce. And eventually it uncouples the dealer and the supply chain if that's your strategy. So those are the reasons to do it, I think, Simon.
Is it people doing it? Do they just want to own the customer? Is that what it's really about?
I think so. The downsides are, I think there's a huge cultural change. I think a lot of manufacturers undervalue the cultural change. I would have to hire a whole team of new people. I'd have to make a lot of redundancies. There's a big balance sheet impact. I've got to take all of the stock and apply it to my balance sheet. Manufacturers have got very skilled at managing the residual value, and I think it undermines a number of the dark arts of residual value management. I'd have to make a big investment in IT and systems. I've got to fund all of the costs of demonstrators, courtesy cars, stocking costs. I've got to start thinking about FCA and finance. FCA is getting more and more complicated. I've got to take on board the valuation of the part exchange, the used car risk. I think I've got less tools to manage a dealer. I've got a business model that's unproven. I think I need to fire myself, Simon. I think I need to give Dash a job because I think you need a retailer running a business rather than a person like me. And I think all too often what you've got manufacturers trying to make change with legacy systems and a legacy mindset. and it needs a whole new way of thinking. So for me, the risk outweighs the upside for manufacturers. There's a big list there, Simon. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a huge list, and it's for someone from an OEM coming out and putting that down on paper like you showed me there and looking both sides. You've obviously looked at it. Also, I go one stage further. Is it going to have an impact on us attracting talent as a dealer, as a retailer? If there is some people at agency and that's the fixed price, that's it. Is that entrepreneurial spirit going to go out of that business to maybe somewhere else where they can apply that? That would be a concern.
I think so. I mean, the reason I've done the work, Simon, in such detail is I want to find out where the value is in agency and deliver it through a traditional dealer agreement. So if online dynamic pricing is a requirement, that's possible through the franchise agreement. Well, you don't need agency. If sharing data is a benefit, we can work together. We can share data. So for me, it's about how do I access the benefits of agency, exposing myself to the downside. So I'm doing it for commercial reasons, Simon.
Yeah, I suppose a real advantage from the customer's point of view is having access to that vehicle, a central pool of vehicles. That, from a customer's point of view, that makes a lot of sense. To have pricing that is transparent and I can trust it, that makes a lot of sense. And I get that side of it there. I think there's just going to be a huge change to culture and mindset. And how much does the OEM's team take on there? If they're looking at residual values, pricing, part exchanges, trade-ins there, that's going to be a huge challenge.
I think so. And I think manufacturers are working it out as they go along. It's an intuitive process rather than a detailed roadmap. But for me, the real concern is the way that I think a dealer will behave. So I did the same list for dealers, and I'll share that with you if you want, Simon.
Yeah, please.
The upside for a dealer, as I see it, is you end up with no stocking costs. You effectively have no new car marketing. You've got no customer goodwill. You've got no new car debt. No write down of demos, and you've got a level playing field in terms of price and stock. The downsides are you've got a fixed margin, which will be lower than the margin you currently enjoy. You've got no volume bonus, no registration bonus. I suspect that agency will have a quality bonus, which will be a risk. The big risk is the manufacturer is responsible for generating customer demand rather than the dealer. And I think you've got a potential loss of new car F&I income. So I think what dealers will do is behave differently, Simon. And I think a transfer of risk equals a transfer of priorities. So I think dealers will switch their focus towards used vehicles. I think dealers will reduce their new car advertising and reduce their new car focus. I think they will switch sell. If I'm a dealer and I've got a franchise agreement and an agency agreement in the same showroom,
which is going to happen in lots of places.
The customer wants an SUV, and the franchise model earns me £2,000, and the agency model earns me £1,000. I think I'll be quite excited about selling the franchise model car to the customer. I think dealers will introduce pay plans that reward a used vehicle sale at a higher commission than an agency sale. I think dealers will stop doing discretional goodwill. When the customer's got a concern or a complaint, they'll just face them towards the manufacturer. I think they'll focus on quality metrics rather than volume metrics. And I think you'll see a reduction in support towards the captive finance company. So dealers will look for where the best finance deal is. And I think manufacturers make money out of the finance company as well as the product.
Of course.
I think I'd be nervous if I was a manufacturer. Be careful what you wish for. How you motivate a dealer in the agency world is a real challenge, I think.
Yeah, it's some of the markets that have happened, they would appear to have a sudden dip after introducing on volume. There seems to be quality staff are leaving. But then there are reports after that things are settling out afterwards. I just worry about the long term, what the OEM's next stage is, who actually owns the customer. I think is a real important part of this one there. And, direct sales is that happen. But here's something else. I've got someone from an OEM here, and I really want to get your view on this. I don't know how to build a car, how to plan for building a car, but there must be, 18 months from when we decide that we want this car to be sold to when we actually sell it, or something like that. It's got to be at least 12 months. So invariably, you as an OEM have to guess what the market's going to be like in a couple of years down the track. That must be incredibly hard. So there's always going to be stock that's not going to sell because the market's moved on. We've ordered the wrong cars. The market went from convertibles, whatever. There has to be an element of push from the OEM. How does that work in the agency sales model? Because it's...
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're planning 12, 18 months in advance. And when we send that production request, we know we've got it wrong. We're just not sure how wrong and which models. Mm-hmm. We're second guessing the size of the market and the customer behavior and the demand for different products. So it's always wrong. It's just a case of how wrong it is, Simon. Mm-hmm. And I think under the agency model, where you've got a pull model rather than a push model, I think dealing with those inaccuracies forecasting is a challenge, because the only way to do it is through pricing, and pricing affects residual value.
And devalues the brand, surely. Let's look what Elon Musk did with Tesla recently. 19% they dropped in one day. The knock-on effect that had on his market as well as the whole market.
I think the other thing that agency is difficult to do is to recognise the impact of regional pricing. Some regions have different demands and different competitive environments. So I think you need to be able to flex your model in line with your market price, which I'm not sure is a national price everywhere.
No, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I think that working out how to deal with those push models in a pull trading model is difficult. How do you convince a customer who wants a mid-grade car they've got to have a high-grade car? Mm-hmm. And how do you convince a customer who'd like a white car but you've only got black that perhaps they should consider the black? And that skill is something that a dealer does every day.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
A dealer manages inventory on behalf of the manufacturer, and they will abdicate that responsibility under agency. So that'll be a real challenge, I believe, Simon. I think it's a good point.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I imagine most OEMs are going to sit there and wait and look at what's happened with the example of Honda in Australia, Mercedes-Benz in the UK now. I believe Sweden and South Africa, Mercedes-Benz done it for a while. I know there's some manufacturers like JLR said, no, we're not doing agency. And I think it was 12 months later said, actually, we might look at agency again. I'm sure lots of people are looking at the advantages and seeing how it's playing out, I suppose. Have you been looking at Mercedes-Benz rolled out agency in the UK? I believe it was January. Have you been looking at their volumes to see how it's affecting, or is it too early?
I think they had a dip in January and February, and I think they're going to deliver a better March. So I think the news is that things will get better. Just tracking the numbers. And if I was a new entrant, I would consider agency. And I think new entrants reverse into the market with an online product, and then go physical over time. But if you've got a physical dealer network, I think you should leverage that advantage.
I suppose there will be more and more of the Chinese coming in, and it's picking the right Chinese to come in. But it's happening, isn't it? Coming in is not the right word. They definitely are, and a lot of those.
I think to Mercedes-Benz credit in the UK, I think their communication, the relationship with the dealers has been good. What I hear is the dialogue has been good, consistent, and there's been a partnership approach to making it work.
Yes.
And not all manufacturers appear to be playing it that way, but I'm not criticising Mercedes-Benz. What I see and hear is they're approaching it in the right way. Whether they get the right results or not, time will tell. But I think they are approaching it in a partnership way. That's not what I'm hearing across the pond in Oz.
Yeah, well, we've had lots of people talk about it, and James Vortman from the Australian Automotive Dealers Association. On this podcast, it's still the most listened to podcast, so there's lots of appetite what's happening. James is the head of the Australian Automotive Dealers Association, and probably central right in the middle with the court case between Mercedes-Benz dealers and Mercedes-Benz Australia. And Dale, when have you ever heard of 90% of the dealer network suing their manufacturer? And again, from the outside looking in, it's not agency as such, it's how they implemented it, the way they did it. I think that was the real thing they got wrong out there.
I think so. The NFDA just released their dealer attitude survey, and the agency brands didn't fare well in the NFDA survey. So I think there's some work to be done on relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that yet, but I need to go and dig that out and have a look for that. And so it's definitely an interesting thing. I don't know if it's going to be a landslide towards agency. We'll wait and see what happens on that one. Now let's talk about Suzuki a bit. I know that you're an all hybrid lineup at the moment, from start to finish. With that in mind, I want to get your views on electric vehicles. And again, a phrase, you got so many great phrases. And the phrase that rung in my head again was, the dogs don't like it. So can we talk about electric vehicles, your view on the future of Suzuki, and of course that phrase, the dogs don't like it?
Yeah, the dogs don't like it is a story I was told by a previous boss years ago. And it's a story of an American pet food company. They created a pet food for older dogs that was full of vitamins that would guarantee your dog would live a longer, happier life. And it was scientifically proven to be true. And the pet food company launched this new product with a big marketing campaign, and sales went through the roof, and then sales dipped. And the owner of the company fired his marketing company and hired a whole new marketing company, and sales still didn't pick up. He then fired his management team. Sales still didn't pick up. And all he could do was create peaks and then a peak and a trough. He couldn't get any growth. And the story is he called an all-hands meeting and said, well, somebody tell me what the problem was. And the janitor at the back raised his hand and said, sir, the dogs don't like it. And I think we've got a bit of that going on in agency. I think agency is a great solution. Not agency, sorry, electric vehicles. I think EVs are a great solution for some customers. And the narrative so far has been around trying to apply a pendulum approach to selling EVs. And the pendulum approach, if you remember, was close. Yes. It's almost as if we're saying there isn't a need for range anxiety and there isn't an infrastructure problem. When the truth is, if you live in the wrong place and you can't charge at home and you can't charge at work, an EV isn't the right car for you right now. If you live in the right place, you've got a good infrastructure around you, and you've got the right journey type in terms of the way you use your car, and you can charge at home, it's a great solution. An EV may be and will be, I think, the right solution for everybody in the future. It's not now. And I think we need to change the narrative and focus on looking after customers' needs. And for some customers, an EV is 100% the right product. And it may well be the right product for everybody in the future. But not everybody wants an EV now. And I think we should recognize that.
Is EV difficult for someone like Suzuki, where we know the cost of electric vehicle is more expensive to produce? And if you look at all the EV vehicles, they tend to be the big lumpy cars, Taycans and e-trons and stuff like that, because you can charge a premium because it costs you more to make and develop that car. Is it tougher then for Suzuki, which is a smaller range of vehicles, to make it stack up the cost-wise from a manufacturing point of view?
Yeah, it is. It's a big ask. I think the electrification of a car is about £10,000 more expensive than a car powered by an internal combustion engine.
And down, I've not heard that figure. Okay, so 10,000.
Yeah, that's the figure I hear, and the view is that figure will halve over time, and range will double over time. So we'll get to a point where it crosses over. But currently, it's about £10,000 more expensive to make an EV than an internal combustion engine car, which at a 60, 70, 80,000 pounds car is not a big difference.
Yeah, okay.
But in a small car, it's a huge difference. So thinking about how we can create a compromise that makes the car affordable, I think is the way forward. So I'm working out what that compromise is. I don't think you'll be able to create a value for money car that has high range, low charge, and is the right price. So I think maybe there'll be some compromises. So I think I can imagine a car which has a low range but a fast charge being a solution. So I think if we're going to provide EVs for everybody, especially in the value sector and especially for the retail buyer, to work out where those compromises are. And at the moment, we seem to be on a march that every new EV has a better range and a faster charge. And I don't think we can keep going like that. I think there need to be some offsets, some customer sacrifices.
The other thing, I'm thinking out loud here, Dale, but one of the issues I think every manufacturer is going to have is making their EV product different. Now, again, branding is always an important part of that. And the reason why I say that, one day in my life, I drove for an event back-to-back a Porsche Taycan, the Audi equivalent, the e-tron GT, I believe it was. It was a Kia EV6. It was the BMW iX4. They had a Leaf there, blah, blah, blah. And if I could shut my eyes when I was driving those cars and didn't know which car I was in, I could have been in any car. I mean, I imagine the challenge that an OEM has is a battery is a battery. It's a bigger or smaller battery. An electric motor is an electric motor. It must be very, very difficult to make themselves different. And if I'm honest, on that day I drove the cars, I think the Kia drove the best, which was the guys at Audi and Porsche would probably be horrified to hear that. Is it so difficult to make the EV product stand out? Because I say that because the Chinese will be coming in with an EV product that if it drives as well as the premium German brand, it's only branding people are going to buy the difference. It's going to be very hard for the manufacturers to get their head around, make themselves different enough.
I think you're right, Simon. I think the drive experience will be similar. I think the design of the car is something that we can focus on, so we can create cars that are emotionally appealing. And going back to our Suzuki story around trust, I think a dealer that you can trust, a dealer that will look after your needs, I think that dealer can be a competitive advantage.
Yes.
So Suzuki, we talk about 4 product pillars. All the tech you need is standard. Hybrid is standard. Surprising quality, and a dealer you can trust. And we think Suzuki is a risk-free purchase. And we think in tough times, customers are looking to de-risk their lives.
Can I go back? You said hybrid, so no extra cost for hybrid. Did I hear that right?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, as standard. So I can have full ICE, or I could go hybrid if I want. Same price on the Suzuki Swift.
Exactly. And when you buy a Suzuki, you get all the tech you need. So you can plug your phone into the radio. We'll have air conditioning. And it will give you all of the things you need. It comes with legendary Japanese quality, and you get a dealer you can trust. So that's our story. And I think the dealer you can trust and the not paying more to access technology will be the key ingredients to making volume EVs sell to value-based customers.
Yeah, I suppose that story that I said there about these different cars that are driving the same, I suppose I'm being naive there, because you look at leather handbags. A leather handbag is just a piece of cow. You could probably get it from Marks and Spencer's, I'm guessing, at £25. You could probably get a Hermes Birkin for, I'm guessing, £10,000. It's still a piece of leather. There will still be people wanting both ends of that, won't they? I suppose. It's people aren't buying just the handbag. It's like your Mont Blanc pen again. You weren't buying a pen to write, were you? You're buying something else there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I talk about marketing, I talk about the fact that emotion leads to reason, logic leads to conclusion. Yeah. And it's the emotion in the brand, the emotion in the design of the product that makes you want to find out more. And then it's the rational, logical reasons that give you the confidence to buy. So brands have to find what the emotional appeal of their brand and their EV is in the future, I think, Simon.
So, Dale, lots of investors, dealers will be listening to this, and lots of them will be your dealers, I'm sure, over the 150. I know Robin Luskin will definitely be listening to this. Okay. What's one thing you believe the dealer should be focusing on over the next couple of years in the industry? I'm sure that your own dealers, you've been talking about this all the time, but for people who aren't one of your dealers, what would you focus on over the next 2 years?
I think I'd focus on used cars. I think we know there will be a shortage of those 1 to 5-year-old cars, and I'll be very clear what my used car strategy was. Otherwise, there's a surprise around the corner. And I'd focus on after-sales retention. I think building deep relationships with customers will be important. And I would focus on clean habits. I think a lot of dealers got lulled into a false sense of security, and the fish were jumping into the net.
Oh, yes.
And I think we need to remember what it is that delivers success, and ask ourselves, have we got a growth mindset? Are we ready? I took a couple of months off the business to look after my wife, and when I came back, I sensed that the business and the dealer network didn't have a growth mindset. They weren't hungry. And I told a story as a parallel. And the story I told was, if you can imagine, Simon, that you're trying to keep fit, and every week you go for a jog with your best friend, and you end up at a gym, and you step into the boxing ring, you both put your gloves on and your face mask, and you jab about for a couple of rounds, and you go for a beer together. The world's changed, and now you've gone for your jog with your best friend. You've arrived at the gym. There's a stranger looking at you. He's very angry. There are no gloves. There's no head guard. It looks like he wants to hurt you. It feels different. And I think that's what's happening in our business. I think we're going to see supply return.
Yep.
Things get much more competitive. And we're going to need to learn to box again. And I think perhaps in some cases we'd be focusing on giving great experiences. But we haven't had to drive volume.
Yeah.
And I think getting clear about what are the habits, what are the things that we do to make us successful, that we used to do, making sure we're still doing them will be really important.
Yeah, it's so true.
You talk to a lot of dealers. Do you see that?
Yeah,
habit?
We talked to lots of dealers out there, and it's been too easy since the pandemic. It's been low-hanging fruit everywhere. And I tell a great story. There was a used BMW salesperson who was selling great number of units, Dale. He thought it was God's gift of salespeople. On a training course, telling other people how to do it. You don't need to do all this. And I said, how long have you been in the motor trade? And of course, he'd only been in the motor trade for 2 years. Yeah. And I just thought, you haven't seen the real world yet. You don't know what it's like, because it is, as you said, it's low-hanging fruit. It's there are plenty of fish in the barrel there. We've got to get back to, dare I say it, good old-fashioned basics. Good old-fashioned what someone did to you with that Mont Blanc pen, told you about the heritage of it. But you know, that happens when you've only got one Mont Blanc pen and you've got 10 people want it. When it goes the other way around, and I really do believe that supply issues are going to come through. Semiconductors, the transportation, the silica in the tires, whatever I hear, is going to go away. I believe, and actually this is a question I have for you, I believe that manufacturers will go into an oversupply situation. They always say they won't, and I get that because it's better for the manufacturer, the OEM, and the dealer, but I can't see that not happening at some point in the future. I hope it doesn't. I hope we stay like Rolex for a while, but my concern is when the supply increases, right at the time when cost of living is biting. And actually, that's where we're going to have to fight. And I love your analogy. I definitely see that out there. And the smart dealers, you got to, this is Craig Petty. Hi, Craig, a great listener of the show and a client. Craig Petty from Hatfields turns around and says, I want to fix the roof while the sun is shining. Been making great profits there, but let's get it right now because what's happening. That's what I'm feeling out there.
Exactly. So when I talk to salespeople about imagining you've got 3 gauges in front of your eyes. They both go from 1 to 10.
Yeah.
You've got to get 3, and 3 10s is the perfect score. And you've got to sell the company, the person, and the product. Wow. So my challenge to you, Simon, would you buy a great product from a person you didn't like and a company you didn't trust?
A great analogy. Great. You've got to get all 3 right, haven't you?
Exactly. So I think if you can get a 7, a 6, and an 8, you can get a sale.
But you could do that. You could actually get as long as there's not enough cars out there, you don't have to have a great person. If you got the product right that no one else wants it, you've got to get all 3 gauges right.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think salespeople should be looking and saying, what's the score? Where do I need to do work? Because the customer's not going to buy from a company that's only scoring 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
What a salesman who's 3 out of 10. Even if the product is 10 out of 10, they're not going to buy in the new world, I don't think, Simon. So those 3 10s, I think, are a nice little visible way of thinking about the job a salesman's got to do right now.
And listen, the enlightened dealers, they know that. They can feel what's happening there. At the moment, we're still delivering a great March. But how many of those cars were sold beforehand? Again, it's measure. It's not the lag. Okay, it's back to that again, because it's the tap is starting to slow down of those people coming through there. We just need to work harder for it. And that's not doom and gloom. Okay, that's not negative. It's like the kid who went home from school and said, "Dad, I think I failed my maths test." And his son said, his dad said to the son, "That's negative. I need you to be positive." He thought for a minute. He said, "Okay, Dad, I'm positive I failed my maths test." Okay. So I just think we need to prepare for it and just get better at the basics there. In fact, Dale, do you remember in 2000, for the people listening outside the country, I started Simco training in 2000 and there was a fuel shortage. Do you remember that, Dale?
Yeah, I do, Simon. Yeah.
Okay, and I always remember this because the petrol station was across one of my very first clients, Robinson Day dealer in Derby. And this guy decided that you couldn't get fuel. Most petrol stations were limiting people to 10 litres or 20 litres to get them by. But this guy took the opportunity to start charging double and 3 times the amount for fuel. He made a fortune because when fuel started coming back through, what did all his customer base do? And of course, it wasn't long after that they went bankrupt because everyone decided I'm not going to buy from there. There's no chance I'm going to buy from him because I'll remember what's happened. So I don't think we've done that in the motor trade, but we need to start looking after people, getting back and fighting, working hard for the business. That's what I find out there in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think there's a phrase I like which says, you won't remember what somebody said, or even what they did, but you will know how they made you feel.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Yeah, so true. So true. Love it. Absolutely love it. Dale, thank you so much for this. I think you've probably, I like to always finish this off by saying, what's your best tip or what's your best idea that you would leave with people? But those 3 gauges, you got to sell yourself first, the product second, then the number. Okay. I don't know. Is there any other tip that someone listening to this could go back and put in their business today, right now, and have an immediate result?
Yeah, I think 2 things, Simon. I think number 1 is, what is your biggest process fail? Fix it. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is, what's your biggest people problem? Face up to it. There's somebody in your business that you know needs a conversation with you right now. Mm-hmm. Either they're not doing the job or they're off the boil, and you're putting off the conversation, and you know who that person is, and you need to talk to them. So swallow, have a swallow, take some courage pills, and have that conversation.
It's not going to get better, is it? Just do it straight away. Love it. Listen, Dale, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. How do people get hold of you if they want to get hold of you? Is LinkedIn the best way to get hold of you?
LinkedIn's the best way. I think I'm quite active on LinkedIn. You can follow me, and just reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to talk. Perfect. And I love the industry, and I'm happy to have a debate. There's no right way, just your way. So these are only my views, Simon, but I'm happy to listen to any counter views.
Love it. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, Dale.
Pleasure, Simon. Have a good day.
That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, simcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn. Thank you.